Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this edition of The Rundown. I am your host, co-post, whatever you want to call it. I'm Craig DeLuz.
You're the co-pilot. I know I'm the pilot. You're the co-pilot. I don't know, Craig. It's you know what? It's a long weekend. I'm Mike. I'm your co-host, and it's great to be back with you.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. Yes, we had a very, very long weekend. One of the challenges of doing this show from, from both the left coast and the right coast is sometimes schedules don't match up. And we're busy guys. So sometimes it happens. So we missed you all on Monday, but we are glad to be with you here on Tuesday.
It's great to be with you. It's great to have you back, and we enjoy coming into your room like this. Although I'd appreciate if you clean that part up right over there a little bit.
Yeah, please do that because I don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that.
No.
Just saying. All right, hey, let's get into the news today, shall we?
We shall.
Top of the news today is, I don't know if it's necessarily a news story as much as it is a perspective, something to help us to get perspective on one of our favorite people. That's right, I'm talking about Stacy Abrams. I'm talking about the individual who has single-handedly taken control. First of all, taking control of the state of Georgia. She is the president of Georgia because, as we all know, even though she's not the governor, she refuses to actually admit that she actually lost the election for governor in the state of Florida. Has yet to concede, by the way, which, is a whole different story. But we know that she has played a big role in how elections have changed in the state of Georgia in such a way that that not only allowed them to be able to win or allowed Joe Biden to win the state of Georgia for the presidential election, but also allowed them to elect two Democrats to the U.S. Senate. Now, but the one thing that you don't know about, and maybe people don't know about, is that Stacy Abrams actually played a role in changing election law previously, about 10 years ago. Only this time when she did it, she was responsible for reducing the number of early voting days from 42 down to 21. This is the time when Stacy Abrams actually suppressed the vote.
Well, Craig, clearly she's a racist and supports Jim Crow laws. That has to be what has happened here.
That's what happened.
She did 10 years ago. She reduced the number of days that the early voting could go on. She reduced it from 42 to 21, right in half. The reason was of the 159 counties in Georgia, she said it was too much of a burden on many of those counties to have to support that kind of endeavor for 42 days instead of 21. So she gave the excuse of it costs too much money. So we're going to reduce the amount of time people can vote by half. And she was seen then as, oh, what a great conservative, fiscal responsible person she was. Crap. She's clearly a racist. She clearly supports Jim Crow laws. The ball rolling. The laws that passed now were much less than that. That was half. They took away a little bit. They actually gave more hours this time. They reduced the number of days, but increased the total number of hours that you can vote.
Well, exactly. But once again, this is kind of the hypocrisy, and this is the way in which they play the game. They don't look at what the actual language of the law is, or what the actual language that is included in the bill is. They just look at who proposed it. And if a Republican proposed it, well, it must be bad. It must be racist because, well, a Republican proposed it. But if a Democrat proposes it, well, it couldn't dare be racist. Well, because, hey, a Democrat proposed it.
Yeah, exactly right. This is just hypocrisy at its best. That this law, the new law that was created, gets rid of the corruption in the voting system. Florida experienced this many years back, got rid of it with the current governor. Your Governor Kemp there in Georgia, folks. He's gonna make sure it's legitimate elections. They're not worried about what Stacy Abrams says, what 100 different CEOs say, and I can guarantee you, probably even Stacy Abrams has not read this law from front to back, and it's not that long. It's not one of them stupid U.S. Congress laws, 8,000 pages. This is a couple of paragraphs that easily spells out what's happened, and none of it reduces voter rights.
It's funny, and I have to tell people, having spent time working in legislation, I actually know kind of first of all, it's a 95-page bill, right? But there's a kind of a cheat code way in which to go through and read it. What you do is you go and you read the version just before the final version that it's in while it's still in the legislature. Because what happens is once the law passes and you read the entire 95-page bill, it's all written as that's the new law.
Yes.
But when you go back in, it's got the strike-throughs and the added
Correct.
new language. So you can skip all the sections that were already law, and you can focus on the areas where there's actual change. So it's really not that hard to go back and read a 95-page bill. Once again, if you know how to go back and read it. And I can tell you, I went back, I read all 95 pages of that bill. I looked it all the way through. I looked at every single change. And quite frankly, there is absolutely nothing that anyone can point to in this bill that is racist. And that's the part that really gets me is we can't have people every single time someone proposes something we disagree with, calling it racist. What'd you call it? The boy that cries wolf?
That's right. That's right. You call it enough, and sooner or later they're going to stop showing up, and the wolf's going to eat you.
Exactly. And that's exactly, folks, what we have happening right here. But in another state, in a nearby state, let's just put it this way: if the boy should have to cry wolf and cries wolf too many times, at least there's a good chance that he will have a firearm to be able to defend himself. That's because in the state of Alabama, they now have made it so that pistol permits are now going to be lifetime. So when you apply for a pistol permit, you don't have to apply and get it renewed and all of that. You apply, and once it's approved, you have it for life. Of course, unless you do something that would cause you to then be prohibited from being able to own a firearm, which, by the way, adds another thing to their law, which is they're adding a list of people who are prohibited from possessing or owning firearms in the state of Alabama. And, Mike had an interesting perspective on this. I wanted him to share with you. And I can kind of share with you a little bit about my perspective, because we actually have a armed prohibited persons list here in the state of California. So, Mike, let the folks know what you think.
Yeah, first off, this is great, Craig. This Alabama, statewide issuance now, or lifetime issuance of your statewide firearm permit. That's great. It's one step closer to constitutional carry. I think within the next legislative cycle or two, they'll be there. This was probably the way to break it in to the citizens that it's coming. With the prohibited persons list, I actually prefer this over our current method. What I really prefer, Craig, and I would just to be clear, everybody I know knows this, I prefer shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed means there is no list, there is no background check. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm here in this country. I'm an adult. I want a firearm. I get a firearm. Shall not be infringed is what that means. We know that these background checks don't work. How many shootings have we seen in the past month where they had their background check? Well, if they had their background check, how could they possibly have committed a crime? They had their background check. They don't work. All the background check is going to do is help start creating the registration, which will then create the confiscation, and that's where this wants to go. With the prohibited persons list, the difference between calling in a current background check and a prohibited persons list. You call in a current background check, I have to give them your name. Hey, Craig DeLuz is here buying a firearm. Mr. DeLuz is here, and I give them your description, and I tell them your date of birth, and then they get to say yes or no. With a prohibited persons list, the dealer could call in or log in to their system and just look for the name. There's a printed list or a database of names that are just on the prohibited list. You scroll down. Okay, you're not on the list. My access code for when I logged in this time was such and such. I make a note of that right here. And then that's good. It's a prohibited persons list. It's kind of like the no-fly list for flying. It's I don't have to call and get a background check on every guy that shows up and I think might be on the no-fly list. They just simply tell me, and I compare my manifest of people on the flight to the no-buy list. And guess what? If you're on the no-buy list, you no-fly. If you're on the prohibited list, when it's getting a time to get a firearm, you no-buy. That's how it goes. But Craig, it's my understanding, it's not perfect having a prohibited list.
No, it's not. So we have what's called an armed prohibited persons list. So in California, if you purchase a firearm, your name goes into a database called AFIS, or Automated Firearm System, where they know you bought a gun, right? Then we also have a list that's been put together, which has a list of all the people who are prohibited, meaning if you have a restraining order, if you've violated any of the misdemeanors that are prohibiting misdemeanors, or if you've been convicted of a felony, or if you've been 5150, or which basically committed, involuntarily committed to a mental institution for 72 hours or for 3 days, however long that is. Anyway, but right. All of these things are prohibiting things. And what they do is they compare the two lists. And if you are armed and prohibited, well, then you get a letter. Well, no, you don't even get a letter. Let me clarify. They actually send people out to your home to confiscate your firearms. They say, we believe you have firearms. You need to surrender those firearms. Now, the challenge that I have with the list is multi-phased. The first is this, California's list has never been correct. It's almost never, so you see what it requires is, it requires for all of the courts, everyone who is responsible for reporting information to the state has to do their job. So, for example, if you have a temporary restraining order because you're in the middle of a divorce in this county way over here, and the divorce is now final, and the restraining order is lifted, if they don't report that to the state, you're still a prohibited person. So the key here is or let's say it's a prohibiting misdemeanor, which is not a lifetime ban on your ability to be able to own a firearm. Let's say in California, we have some misdemeanors that will prohibit you for 5 to 10 years. Well, at the end of that time, someone needs to report that you are now no longer prohibited from being able to own or possess a firearm. If that information, if the database is not updated, well then you once again, you continue to lose your rights. So the problem is, number one is the system has got to be right. And I don't know about the state of Alabama, but California is the home of technology, of Silicon Valley, and our state government cannot seem to figure out how to run a database that doesn't crash or is not completely and utterly screwed up or a hot ghetto mess in one way or another. So I've kind of a hard time. And the other thing is that if you're prohibited and you go to purchase a firearm, you're now guilty of a federal crime. Being a prohibited person, even if it's not federally prohibiting, if you prohibited at a state level and you go to try and purchase a firearm, you've now committed a federal crime, trying to purchase a firearm while prohibited. So I guess that's my issue with the data with the prohibited person database. Although I have to agree with you, if we're gonna have one system or another, I'd rather the feds not have my information. I'd rather them just like, okay, is he prohibited from owning a firearm? No. Okay, let him buy one, or as many as he wants.
Yeah, that's where I'd go. Again, I think both of us, we prefer the shall not be infringed method. But if we can't take all our rights back in one day, let's chisel back away at them the same way they did to get them.
Exactly. And that's folks, and this, I think you just that was a really important nugget right there, because I think a lot of people in the gun rights community want us to go for the long bomb every single time. And what they don't understand is that we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get out of this overnight. As they seek to come after our fundamental right, it's important for us to fight them back one step at a time, to continue to take ground. And you just don't do that in big, huge, expansive steps. You do that one step at a time.
That's it. That's right.
One step at a time. Speaking of steps, well, this is a funny one because, we all know that the president, well, let's just say this, he has seen finer days. We all know that half the time he has no idea where he is. He has no idea what he's talking about. And nowhere was it more evident than when he did his press conference the other day talking about gun laws and talking about what was true and what was not true of gun laws. And here's the funny part. You know that he has to be off when CNN starts fact checking you on what you're saying about guns. That's right. CNN decided to fact check. When they fact checked him on three statements that he made at the time. The first was that when he said that gun manufacturers couldn't be sued, right? Now, Mike, we all know that that's just not true.
It is not true. It's much the same as qualified immunity. If the firearms manufacturer or the firearms dealer violates no laws, commits no overt act, where their intent was to hide something or commit that criminal act, unless that occurred, then they don't get sued. If they knowingly sell to a person that can't have a firearm, if they alter a firearm in any such way, if there's a defective firearm that they made, then they're not covered. They're simply covered if, hey, listen, we followed your rules. We did your 4473. We sold a working firearm, and then that guy took it out and decided he was going to go commit a crime with it. We're not liable.
Well, exactly. And that's because people wanted to sue firearm manufacturers and hold them up in court and require them to spend a whole bunch of money on legal fees when they did absolutely nothing wrong. Now, like you said, if they do something wrong, then they are allowed to be sued. And that's the same sort of protection that, quite frankly, auto manufacturers have, or desk manufacturers, or microphone manufacturers, any other manufacturer has out there. It's nothing new. It's nothing special. They just had to put it in the law because, well, there are people out there who, in the name of taking away our fundamental rights, aren't afraid of the idea of abusing the law. Now, one other thing that the president said that wasn't true had to do with background checks at gun shows. Now, he said basically you could go to a gun show and buy a gun from a dealer without going through a background check. But guess what? If they're a licensed dealer, you have to go through a background check.
Yeah, they have to. But, Greg, we all know you can go to the gun show and you reach in the loophole and you pull the gun out. And you have it. That's how you get the gun. You reach into the loophole.
I forgot all about the loophole because clearly, obviously, reaching into the loophole, the liberal loophole, the one that they say exists, that's all you need at a gun show. So all laws cease to exist in the loophole. In the
loophole. Yeah, listen, if you're going to make up things about a loophole in the space-time continuum, you get to make whatever rules you want. So they get to do this. Folks, when you go to a gun show and there's licensed dealers there, you're going to be doing your form 4473, and you're going to be doing a background check. There are people there at some gun shows, depending on the state you're in, where the law says if you still have private transactions, there might be some guy walking around with a rifle saying, hey, I'm trying to sell this rifle to a dealer. But you ever try to sell your rifle to a dealer? It's like trying to sell your car back to a car dealer. As soon as you took it off the lot, it's worth about half. So there's other people walking around. They might hear you say to the dealer, I'm trying to sell this, and he's going to offer $300, and you might hear it and go, man, that's worth $500. Hey, buddy, I'll give you a $350. And he says, okay. And you're allowed to make that transaction. That's a personal transaction. Right. You're calling that the loophole. That's a personal transaction. You people still have rights. You still have to be responsible. You don't just buy a gun from somebody and shake their hand and give the money. No. Hey, buddy, let me see your ID. You take a picture of yours. I take a picture of mine. Hey, are you a convicted felon? No? Hey, you know what? I don't even know you. Let's go over here and get us a background check. You could still do that. But you know what? If they've got a concealed weapons permit, you just take a look at that. Because guess what the concealed weapons permit means? It means they had a background check. Exactly. No reason to go and pay for more money to do it. Well,
and in some states, even for private, like California, even with private party transfers, you still have to go through it. Actually, that has to go through a licensed dealer. So the number of private party transfers that are out there, and by the way, the number of those guns, firearms, are actually being used in crimes is infinitesimal.
Yeah, like this many. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But that wasn't all that he decided to lie about, because he decided to also get into the idea of red flag laws, where the president actually said, well, in states that have passed red flag laws, and you guys know what these are, this is where, someone can go to court and have your gun rights taken away. You don't even know about it till the police show up to take your guns. Yeah, that. They said that, well, suicides have gone down in states that have passed red flag laws. And guess what? Another lie. Because from 1999, when they first started red flag laws, even into the recent years where more states passed red flag laws, suicides are not down. In fact, in 2019, they went down a little bit, but guess what? In 2020, they went up significantly.
Well, if I had to go through 2020 again, I might consider it myself. But yeah, it's a load of poopy. It's just Joe Biden up there. All he's thinking about is that tapioca. Man, Kamala said, if I say this, I get me some tapioca. So I'm going to say it. He has no idea what he's talking about. They're lies. CNN pointed out their lies. They got to be lies.
Well, exactly. And that's, dude, I'm telling you, that's what drives me so nuts about a lot of this is that they just, I mean, I appreciate that CNN had to fact check him because these were just things that were just clearly, utterly not true. Yeah. You know, kind of like when he said that, you know, Georgia's voting law was worse than Jim Crow, which anyway, we already covered that. We're not going to go back to that.
Jim Eagle, he said.
Oh yeah, makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
I guess that makes sense to Joe there, but I have no idea. But yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, watching what this guy says. Listen, CNN didn't even bother to talk about that. He got the name of the agency wrong multiple times. You know, he's talking about the old AFT over there. We're going to AFT is going to do this for us.
Well, you know, and speaking of lies and big tech and the media actually trying to cover up and hide lies, you know, there's an incident that's taking place right now. A gentleman, Jason Whitlock, who is a commentator, mostly does sports, but has been getting more and more into doing some conservative commentary, decided to point out and talk about one of the founders of Black Lives Matter has actually purchased millions of dollars worth of property utilizing resources that have been raised through Black Lives Matter, and has purchased a number of homes, including a $1.4 million piece of property. He decided to criticize her for utilizing those resources that were meant to go to help address the movement of Black Lives Matter, for using it for personal gain, and Twitter locked him out of his Twitter account.
Yeah, just about 500,000 followers there, and they said, "Sorry, I don't agree with your criticism of Black Lives Matter, so you've got to go." Yeah, it was a house in California, 1.4 million, a piece of big property out in Georgia for just over 400,000. Oh, this guy's having a grand time using BLM's donated money, that's for sure. So, get out there and donate, folks. You know, at least if you're donating to his house, it's not to anti-gun movement. So, yeah, just keep donating. Go right ahead.
Well, you know, and here's the thing. Like, so BLM raised about $90 million last year. I mean, the worst part is that I really believe that a lot of people were giving money to BLM thinking that they were doing it to help promote quote unquote anti-racism or to try and help improve things. But the fact is, Black Lives Matter, the organization that raised the money, the organization this woman runs, if you went back now, they've now scrubbed a lot of this stuff off of their page because they were actually being criticized for it. They are literally a Marxist organization. They are founded by Marxists. Their whole goal is to tear down society, to destroy all of the fundamental systems and foundations of society, including the family. Right? They want to tear down the family. They want to tear down the church. They want to tear down the government. They want to tear down the criminal justice system. They want to destroy it all and build it anew in their own image. I'm assuming now, based, you know, part of their image is going to be, you know, expensive real estate is going to be kind of the new image, I guess, that they're going to be portraying. But the thing is, folks, is these are not people who are interested in bettering society. They're interested in destroying the very things that made our country and our society what it is.
Folks, just to give you a little more scope on this, all right, they've locked out Jason Whitlock here of his Twitter account because he's gone against the founder of Black Lives Matter. And we need to, I think it's part of the story, Craig. We haven't told the folks yet, but if you've never seen Jason before, he's black also. So they're calling him a racist.
Right. He's clearly but because he's criticizing Black Lives Matter, he's clearly racist against black people.
That's the way it works. That's the way it works. Yep.
He black man who hates black people because, well, he dare criticize Black Lives Matter.
That's right.
It is asinine. And then, you know, by the way, there are a lot of people, and you know, my brother's an active Democrat. I'm not going to out him on some, but even he acknowledges that there's a lot of the stuff, a lot of people in that organization, and a lot of the chapters of BLM that are not interested in doing right by people. They have their own agenda,
Right.
and I think it's kind of obvious that those at the federal level, at this national organization, there's BLM, the statement, BLM, the movement, and BLM, the organization. I think BLM, the statement, I think, yes, Black Lives Matter because all lives matter. And, I know some people out there are going to call me racist because I say all lives matter, but if all lives matter, then yes, Black Lives Matter. There's the movement, which I think has some things that we can all get behind. Obviously, we want to see racism 100% stamped out. We want to try and see equality in society and have everybody have equal opportunity. But there's also some things that are included in there, including some of this critical race theory BS that is racist in and of itself. That is part of that we don't get behind. But then there's the organization, and I think it's important to know that when most people are criticizing Black Lives Matter, they're criticizing the organization because the organization, once again, its founders are Marxist. They're trained Marxists according to their own words, and their goal is what Marxism is, which is the complete tearing down of our society. And I don't know about you, but I know our society ain't perfect, but it's the best thing in the world. And I'm not interested in seeing that torn down.
Yeah, right there with you the whole way, Craig. Again, just a quick mention there. You said you talked about all lives matter. Listen, folks, that doesn't mean I don't agree, or I think your point of view is wrong. But you cannot redefine my words. All lives matter does not mean I hate Black lives. All lives matter means all lives are important to me. It doesn't matter who. I'm not going to set one above the other, one left or right of the other. All lives matter. These are easy words to define. They don't mean anything more than that.
Right. So, kind of falling along the same lines of that, everybody knows, or I'm sure unless your head's been buried in the sand, there was another officer involved shooting that included an African-American man who was shot in Minnesota by a police officer. The individual, without getting into too much detail, pulled over on a traffic stop, discovered he had a warrant. I believe the warrant was firearms related. He proceeded to try and get back in the car and drive off, and the officer drew a gun, shot, and the man is dead. And as a result of that, a player, Aaron Hicks, is sitting out a Yankees game because of the shooting that took place in Minnesota. And well, Mike, I'll let you go ahead and comment first. You're the baseball guy, so I'll go ahead and I'll let you kind of chime in.
Listen, the shooting in Minnesota, hopefully we'll get to some more information on that. We know that as of what the chief has said right now, it appears to have been an accident. Meant to pull her taser, not her firearm. And you can see that in the video where she's talking about her taser, but she's holding her firearm in her hand. So don't know if at this point if deadly force would have been used either way, because sometimes you can use your taser in lieu of. Sometimes you can use the taser for lesser things. So not sure where this was. They'll get to the bottom of that. I'm sure they will. There's too many eyes on things like this right now. We'll know what's going on. And in the meantime, if you are a felon with a gun charge and you're being handcuffed, maybe you shouldn't try and jump away from the police and get back in the car. If this was an accidental shooting, I'm not saying it's his fault at all. I'm just saying, you know what? If you're not a felon with a gun charge, you probably wouldn't have this interaction with the police.
Well, interestingly, in almost all of these cases, and I know some people are going to get mad at me when I say this, but in almost all of these cases, the individuals are either actively or passively resisting the officers, or not. They are not complying with orders given by law enforcement, and you have to know that you put yourself at risk when you do that. Everybody, if people don't realize that after the last year that we have had, there's no reason why anybody should not know this. And that, by the way, doesn't matter who you are. If you can be white, black, Asian, Native American, it doesn't matter. if you are actively or even passively not complying with orders given to you by an officer, it's going to cause you problems. You have to know that. Now, in this particular case, with the baseball player deciding he's not going to play,
This gets me, Craig. I'll tell you what. I am a traditionalist when it comes to baseball. I love the history of baseball, love the sport, love the entertainment value that it provides to us as Americans, and you're actually as all people around the world, because baseball's an international sport at this point. It's entertainment. It's meant to take our minds off of the daily shenanigans that go on in the world. I get that you baseball players, you're human also, and perhaps things affect you. And this player, Aaron Hicks, he actually played in Minnesota for a few years. Listen, I don't believe that he knew Aaron Hicks. I think that's ridiculous to say that he's taking the time off because it was a close friend of his. He said that he was affected by it. Let me tell you something. All right, do your job. Your job is baseball. You do a good job of it. You made the major leagues. You're in the show. You're in the bigs. That's what we want to see out of you. If this had happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, and I know that makes us sound like old crusty farts, Craig, but guess what? Mickey Mantle, those kind of players, Hank Aaron back in the day, while they were on the road playing baseball, their wives were having babies at home. Yeah, yep. They didn't get to go home. If they would tell them, if you'd like to take 2 days off to go home and watch your baby be born, don't come back. I'll see you in spring training next year, and you can try and make the team again.
Well, it's the other issue here is that we don't even know all of the facts, but this is what gets me is because people who literally want to tear, once again, they want to tear down our country, they want to tear down the fundamental building blocks of this nation. They know that the facts are not on their side, so they completely and utterly push every emotional button they can. And in particular, I hate to say this with this little 20-year-old Gen Z, and I know some Gen Zs out there are going to get mad at me, but they are guided around by their heartstrings, and the idea of applying logic and reasonable thinking and saying, hey, let's get all of the information so that we know exactly what happened and what went on before we lose our minds. How about we do that? How about we get the data and the information? I mean, the number of people who were mad at me with the whole George Floyd thing when I said, I get it. It looks really bad. And it looks like this guy did something unspeakable. But there's a lot we don't know. We didn't know what the toxicology report was going to say, right? We didn't know what happened before that 9-minute video. Right? We don't know what happened before that, what led up to that whole thing. We don't know if what he did or how he did it was part of training or was part of policy, and this was how he was trained. We didn't know any of that, right? And people just wanted to just jump to a conclusion that this guy's guilty of murder, right? We don't know what the relationship between the two were. In this particular case, we don't know anything, right? Why not, before we lose our minds, why not stop and let the facts come out?
If you're not out there committing crimes, odds are you're probably not going to be confronted by the police over committing a crime. It's if you take some personal responsibility for what you do in your life, if you become that person that knows what's going on around them, knows their surroundings, and just says, wait a second, this is probably not acceptable behavior. Doing drugs, getting in fights with cops, passing counterfeit bills, having a gun warrant against me, all that stuff is not things you want to do if you want the cops to leave you alone. Craig, I was driving home today from work, and there was a car, probably 15 years old car, maybe 20-year-old car, not in the best of condition. And listen, I get it. People go through hard times, and if that's the car you got, that's the car you got. But this guy decides, listen, he doesn't want to wait to pass. He's going to jump on the shoulder and going 60 miles an hour and cut around everybody else. And he's got one donut tire on the car, and the rest of it's all banged up, and he's going to keep going, and he's going to speed. And that's the guy that gets pulled over, Craig. And as soon as the cops talk to him, he goes, man, I can never catch a break. You guys are always after me. All right. I think maybe you need to take a look at yourself here, okay? Because
You know,
it's when they say it's not me, it's you. Well, it's you, okay?
it's you. It's you. Speaking of that, by the way, there's someone else who needs to take a long look at themselves, and that would be Major League Baseball as a whole. Representative, let me show you this tweet that was sent out. This is from Representative Nancy Mace. She posted this, and one of the things that she noted in this particular thing was, Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game from Georgia because they require IDs in order to be able to vote. But Commissioner Jim Crow over there at MLB requires you to use an ID in order to pick up your tickets from will call. I think we got some racists in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, listen. Yeah, and if you try and pay with a credit card, guess what? Show them your ID while you're in person.
Exactly. And if you want a beer while you're at the game.
Yep. Show them your ID.
Show them your ID.
All clearly racist actions on the
clearly by their own actions, they are declaring that requiring someone to show an ID in order to do something is in fact racist. So Major League Baseball, time to look in the mirror.
Commissioner Rob Manfred, you continue to disappoint. You're going to ruin it. You're going to ruin it.
Oh, you're a hot ghetto mess. Anyway, folks, hey, that's going to be it for today's episode. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. By the way, this was our first episode run live on Facebook. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We still want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. Like and share, but also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Take care.